Dan Illman, Mike Beer, race number 10 at Churchill Downs on Kentucky Oaks Friday, the Grade 2 $500,000 Twin Spires Turf Sprint. We're going 5.5 furlongs on the turf, and we're going to take a look at this field. It is a big field. It's a very competitive group. Your morning line favorite is the 10 Arrest Me Red, Mike, at 4-1, but I think you can make a case for 6, 7, 8 of these.
Yeah, I agree. It does handicap pretty wide open. That being said, I do think they got the right morning line favorite. I do think Arrest Me Red is the horse to beat here, second off the layoff day. Not only because he's pretty good, but just because I feel like he's got the right running style for this race. As big as this field is, there's not a ton of speed in here, and he's going to be up close.
It is an excellent point and an excellent segue into our Timeform US Pace Projector. You're going to see the protagonists on the Pace Projector, and I think Timeform US has the top 4 right. The 11 Just Might, the 12 Johnny Unleashed, the 3 Caravel, the 10 Arrest Me Red. Now, maybe they won't be in that order after the first quarter of a mile, but I think those 4, they constitute the speed.
Yeah, I agree with you. I do feel like Just Might is probably going to make the lead in here. That's, when he's at his absolute best, is when he can get to the front, and he's got post 11, so they might have to use him a little bit, but I do think they're going to try to make the lead with him.
In from Southern California is the number 1, Gregorian Chant, for trainer Phil D'Amato. And this is a horse that's done very well going slightly longer distances in Southern California, including his most recent start. Let's watch this allowance race to kick off his season, off of a fairly substantial layoff. Now, they're going down the hill at 6.5 furlongs. He's on the outside turning into the stretch, and he's just simply better than this field. He's going to beat Bran, who's also in here. I thought from a fitness standpoint, Mike, this is exactly what the connections were looking for. I do wonder if 5.5 furlongs is sharp, and he's going to have to work out a trip from the rail.
I agree with all that stuff. I like that, just to see Gregorian Chant sort of get back into form in that race, Dan, off the layoff, which maybe he just needed ultimately, because at the end of the day, he won that race really easily, as you could see there from the replay. It did not look like he was all into me. So I liked that performance from him. I'm worried that he has to cut back now again to 5.5. I'm a little worried that he goes without Lasix again, because he had Lasix back on for that race. His prior 3 starts were just sort of okay without Lasix. And maybe that wasn't the problem at all, but maybe it was. So it's just something you have to concern yourself with. I do think this horse is good, and I love that he gets Joel Rosario.
This is the kind of horse that I want to see run well, and then I want to bet him back in the Jaipur if he's any kind of a good price on Belmont Stakes Day. I just think the 6 at Belmont Park is going to be perfect for him. The 2 is the Lear Jet, and this horse won 2 starts back at Kentucky Downs over the undulating European-like configuration. That distance, I think, helped him. I think the fact that that pace kind of fell apart helped him. Last time out, let's just give him plenty of excuses. First start off the long layoff, he faced a freaking Golden Pal in a race where the pace completely held up, and he didn't break very well.
Yeah, plenty of excuses for his last start. If you're, looking to give this horse, a second look in here, you could certainly do that. I can't say that I loved his prior form, Dan. He did win that Grade 2 Kentucky Downs, as you mentioned. That's a longer race. He got a great trip in there right up through the inside, which was where you wanted to be that day. I don't know. He's pretty good. I think he can win this race. I didn't really want to bet him.
Ticking on the boys is the number 3, Caravel, who was purchased for $500,000 in November and immediately paid some dividends for the new connections. Trainer Brad Cox at Turfway, they found a really great spot for her on the synthetic and the Queen Stakes. She went right to the front. She dominated that overmatched field. I think they're going to be real aggressive with her leaving the stalls, and she's done well against the boys in the past. She fits.
Yeah, I wonder if they're going to if that's her new running style now. They're just going to use her speed again like they did first time for Brad Cox. That's not really how they have ridden her typically, and at least in all of her races, Dan. She was really good for her breeder and her original trainer, Elizabeth Merriman. She was really good early on. Once they turned her over, sold part of her, turned her over to Grand Motion last year, to me, she just totally lost her form at the end of the year. But it does feel like Brad Cox got her back on the beam last time.
I think Chasing Artie's interesting. Very lightly raced. It's possible we haven't seen his best, and he looked good in his most recent start at Gulfstream. The race we're going to show you right now, that's only an allowance race, but consider this is his first start since July, and he was able to stay close to a legitimate pace, and he's able to beat some horses that maybe have seen some better days, horses like Shecky Shabazz, but the Virginian would come back and buy her 91 in his next start when entered for a 62.5 tag.
Yeah, I just like this performance from him. He got a great trip in here for the most part, and you're right that it probably was against some horses who aren't quite as good now as they once were. I still want to give him credit just for winning as easily as he did off of a pretty long layoff. And I liked his first three turf sprint starts, Dan. I mean, he ran well in all those. He's undefeated sprinting on the grass. He's got a little bit of speed, so if this pace is slow, it's not going to necessarily affect him as it could affect some others. And I think he's got a lot of upside.
Cowan was second in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Turf Sprint in 2020, and he's been good on dirt. He's been good on turf for most of his career. Let's talk a little bit about his last race, the Colonel Power at the Fairgrounds, going 5.5. He finished behind several of these horses. Did you find an excuse for him that day? He was 9-2. He was down inside.
He was down inside, and it was a race that just sort of fell apart at the end for whatever reason. Just might got really tired in there and couldn't hold on. I didn't think he had a huge excuse, but he was down towards the inside. His race 2 starts back where he got placed first over Just Might. I didn't think he was necessarily going to win that race, Dan, without the DQ. I don't know. He's pretty good, and he's another horse who could be within range of the pace in here, but I think he's got to run the race of his life to win.
We saw Bran placed behind Gregorian Chant in that optional claiming race at Santa Anita. Bran then came right back to win the Siren Lure Stakes at the Great Race Place. Let's watch that performance over the straightaway 6.5 the left-handed turn, not the down the hill turf course. Nice trip in here. Not a fast pace. Got up close to it. Finishes it off. I don't think this was the strongest field in the world, so he's got to step up in class, and he also has to turn back in distance, Mike. And I'm not sure 5.5 is really his game. It could be a little sharp for him.
Yeah, I feel the same way about it. I didn't like this performance, even though he got the job done. I didn't like it enough to want to bet him back in this race, Dan. He did win 4 times sprinting in France, but 2 at 6, 2 at 7. I'm not sure that cutting back to 5.5 actually helps this horse.
Florent Giroux gave Diamond Oops the number 7 such a wonderful ride when he won this race in 2020. He came from a million lengths back. He found every hole, and Diamond Oops did the rest. And Diamond Oops is another horse. You run him on dirt, you run him on turf, and when he's feeling right, he always has a puncher's chance. Now, there are some that are going to say he's a little bit long in the tooth right now, but at Keeneland last time out, again, the race completely held together from a pace standpoint. It was won by a monster in Golden Pal. He actually showed a little bit of late life, Mike. The question is, does he get enough pace here? Because he needs it.
Yeah, I agree with you. He did show a little bit of late life in that most recent start. And it was good to see, Dan, because I was getting worried about him. His prior 3 or 4 starts, I didn't really like any of those performances from him. I know he's good enough on his day. He is good enough to beat this field if he can pull some kind of a trip. And maybe he'll, show up here and run one of his really good races. If he does, he can win.
Rusty Arnold got the number 8 geared Jockey. Very good last summer. Perfect trip victory going 5.5 at Saratoga, followed by a horror trip in the Grade 3 Troy, a race in which he ran a very good third, and then he got a very nice trip at Kentucky Downs. They just put him right up close to the pace, and he outfinished Diamond Oops to win with a triple-digit Buyer's speed figure. Still trying to find that kind of form, Mike, but I wonder if he's racing himself back into shape. He was very far behind in the Shakertown, and he passed some tired horses late.
I could see giving him the benefit of the doubt. I don't really like either of his first 2 starts back from the layoff, Dan, but maybe you're right. Maybe Rusty Arnold, listen, there's a big purse for this race, and he might have just been pointing for this one for gear Jockey. That would certainly make sense. He's good enough to win, another horse good enough to win, and with enough speed to stay up close to the pace if he has to. I wasn't interested at the 5-1 morning line, but he's another horse. If he drifts a little bit, I'll be using him.
Pyron is the number 9, and we talked a little bit about that Colonel Power at the Fairgrounds earlier, a race where Just Might seemingly had it in the bag. Clear lead in mid-stretch. You'd think that Just Might, with his class and form lines, would have put that field away. He did not. It fell apart the pace, and Pyron, from far, far back on his left lead, got it done. He seems like a true closing sprinter. He wouldn't mind a little bit of giving the ground, I don't believe. The question is pace.
Yeah, it is. It'll be interesting to see because I do feel like I feel like looking at the Colonel Power on paper, you just sort of feel like maybe Just Might, just didn't run his race that day for whatever reason. The fractions don't look that fast. I think that pace was pretty fast, Dan. Just Might had a horse, who failed to break well, just sort of rush up after him on the backstretch, and he sort of had to race that horse, and I think it cost him at the end. Maybe Pyron took advantage a little bit. His last 2 races, I feel like they're both good, and they're, if you like him and you feel like he's going to get another good trip in here, you can bet him. I think he's another one. I would want more than the 6-1 morning line if I was going to take him.
Your morning line favorite is the 10 Arrest Me Red for Wesley Ward and Irad Ortiz. The source went gate to wire in his final two starts as a 3-year-old of 2021, and I think he got a perfect prep race in the Silks run last time out at Gulfstream. Let's turn into the stretch this day. Yes, he was the beaten favorite, but as you see, he has a lot of work to do turning into the stretch. He's really over in behind horses for most of the lane. He gets out very late, and he does put in a decent late kick. He's obviously run races fast enough to win this. I just think from a fitness standpoint, he benefits from that, from this race we're watching right now.
I agree with you, Dan. I feel like they might have just been giving him one off the layoff here. Irad, for a horse who has as much speed as this horse does, he didn't get aggressive with this horse in the early part of that race at all. He was always sort of between and behind horses off the pace, and I thought he finished up perfectly well there once he got some room in the stretch. They probably got out of that race exactly what they wanted. Now they get to come here and go for the big purse.
Just Might is the number 11. Rafael Bejarano takes the mount for a very good trainer, Michel Lavelle. 10-1 on the morning line, considering this horse's credentials, is a very fair price. And I just draw a line through the Shakertown. I don't think this horse performs best at Keeneland. I don't think he performs well with Given the Ground. Now, that could be an issue if there is rain at Churchill on Friday, but he's going to be showing his customary speed. No shame in being outsprinted to the front by Golden Pal.
Yeah, I mean, aside from all the other stuff, the Keeneland and the little bit of cut in the ground last time, there was just no way he was going to be able to run his best race with Golden Pal in there, just outrunning him to the early lead. This time, he'll make the early lead. Any one of his, typical good turf sprint performances is going to make him very, very tough in here.
The 12 is Johnny Unleashed. And we talked about him a little bit before the Shakertown, and we say this horse, it's like he can read the tote board. Whenever he's a giant price, he comes through with a big effort, and lo and behold, he did. He finished ahead of 4 of these horses at 70-1, and we're going to take a look at that race right now. Golden Pal is a monster for Wesley Ward. He's going back to Royal Ascot. He just showed this field his heels. Johnny Unleashed was on the chase throughout, and he keeps right on trying. Good effort, tough post. I need to see him do it again, but it'll be a price.
Yeah, he should be a price again. I don't think it'll be the 70-1 he was last time, but he'll still be a price in here. Ultimately, I just kind of feel like this was a little bit of a suck up second. Dan just sat on the rail the entire way, and he's going to manage to hold on for second without ever really making a race of it. I'm not knocking this horse. He's a big price. He ran okay last time.
Now the most fascinating horse in the race, in my opinion, that's the 13. What Makes Sammy Run? What an intriguing spot for the first race since Del Mar Summer, the opening day of the Del Mar meet, the Oceanside. He was the beaten favorite that day. Now, the Oceanside featured a blazing fast pace. He was right up close to it, and I think he did well to only get beat less than 2 lengths. It was a race that produced 4 next out winners. Mike, what are we getting off a long layoff from an outside post cutting all the way back to 5.5?
Yeah, I don't mind him starting off sprinting on the turf day because in some ways, I think he's a better turf sprinter than he is a router. Not that he's bad going up to a mile. I think he can get the mile too. But I really like all of his sprint performances, especially those first 2 wins for trainer Mark Glatt once he took over. Both 6 furlongs at Santa Anita, just really strong, winning both of those races, Dan, within range and just running over the leaders at the end there both times. This horse was also a very good sprinter back in New York early on, Dan, when George Weaver had him. I would point out the Atlantic Beach back as a 2-year-old. He was beaten by Arrest Me Red that day, but this horse, that was at a time on the Aqua Turf course where you had to be inside. Arrest Me Red just sat on the rail. This horse tried a 3-wide bid there. He actually ran really well in that race. I think this horse is good, and he's going to be a price.
I loved his race in the Desert Code 2 starts back. I know he was odds on. He got hammered leaving the gate. He ended up swinging to the outside, and he was just dominant in the lane. Before we get to our top picks, please click on the subscribe button on the Daily Racing Form YouTube channel for access to all of DRF TV's offerings. Top pick time, Mike's going for the price, the 13. What Makes Sammy Run? We talked about all the things he's got going for him. He's done well sprinting in his career. He has a legitimate excuse for his last race. You got to deal with the layoff, but boy, that helps your price too.
Yeah, the layoff is probably the big concern. This trainer does have good numbers off of layoffs, though, so I'm hoping he's got this horse ready. I don't think he'd ship him all the way across the country for his first start if he didn't feel like this horse was going to run. I'm going to try him. I'm not against your horse, Dan. I think Arrest Me Red's the horse to beat.
But boy, I hate the morning line. I was surprised that he was the favorite in here at 4-1, considering he did get beaten his last start at Gulfstream at odds on. But like you, I think maybe they were giving him that race, and I think he's going to get forward and not in behind horses this time around. 13-10-4-1 for Mike, 10-9-1-8 for me. Twin Spires Turf Sprint, 500 grander on Oaks Friday. Good luck.